It is early in the morning here in the UK. It is around 7 a.m. and I come here every morning to this little forest near my home to read a passage like the notes that Tolstoy added to his calendar of wisdom. I think that this practice of beginning my day with Tolstoy, not with social media or news, is a much better beginning of the day. It sets a different kind of rhythm. It nourishes your soul. So I would like to read a passage for the June 23rd, which is today, and show you how Tolstoy constructed this calendar. I want to persuade you to buy this book and to begin your day, each day, with a quote from Tolstoy that he collected here. For the June 23rd, he included a quote by one of my favorite Stoic philosophers, whose name is Epictetus. Epictetus says, "Only he who accepts that the essence or meaning of his life is not material but spiritual can be free. A slave who is happy with his state is a slave twice over, because not only his body but his soul is enslaved. O God, while I stay on this earth, I want to be that which I am." This is a quote by Epictetus. This is the thought that is going to follow me throughout the day, throughout this day to June 23rd. As I go to work, as I come back home, as I spend my evening, I think these ideas are going to follow me, and I find this absolutely beautiful. I would recommend you to do and practice something similar yourself, because it just takes 30 minutes of my morning routine to do this. Maybe you don't have a forest like this to come and read. You can perhaps do this in a spare bedroom that you have in your apartment or house. Anywhere where you can find privacy, even your morning commute on the way to work, on a bus or a train, can be a time when you can nourish your soul. If I were to ask you which of Tolstoy's works is the most important one, you might reply, it's War and Peace or Anna Karenina. Some of you might say it's Haji Murat. But Tolstoy himself thought differently. He thought that this book that I'm holding in my hands is his most important contribution to humanity. In his diary, Tolstoy wrote that this book must be read by millions for spiritual nourishment. In 1884, he wrote, "I have to create a circle of reading for myself. Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius, Lao Tzu, Buddha, Pascal, the New Testament, this is all necessary for all people." He spent the last 15 years of his life in search of pieces of wisdom which will compile and become his biggest contribution to humanity. And when he sent the first draft to his publisher, he wrote, "What can be more precious than to communicate every day with the wisest men of the world?" The very first edition of this book was published in 1904. The title of the book was The Thoughts of the Wise Man. And throughout his life, Tolstoy saw 3 different editions of his book being published, and each of them had a different subtitle. Publisher decided to choose different subtitles each time. One of them was A Circle of Reading, another one was A Wise Thought for Every Day, the third one, A Way of Life. So subtitles changed completely. What makes this book incredibly interesting is that how diverse are the thinkers that Tolstoy decided to include in this volume. You can see Marcus Aurelius and Confucius on the same page, thinkers from different civilizations and different time periods. Or you can see the German philosopher Immanuel Kant being quoted right next to the American journalist Lucy Mallory, who was a contemporary of Tolstoy. In the midst of 1905, when Tolstoy was revising his second edition of the calendar, he wrote, "For 2 months I did not read anything else, neither newspapers nor magazines, and I felt so good. I became more and more astonished by the ignorance, and especially by the cultural, moral ignorance of our society. All our indication and attention should be directed to the accumulation of the cultural heritage of our ancestors, the best thinkers of the world." I have to say, it is very funny to read this quote today in the age of news and social media. As often it is, I wonder what would Tolstoy think if he knew that news is going to become the modern day religion. What makes this second edition of Tolstoy's Calendar of Wisdom different from his first and the third? Tolstoy decided to group all the quotes according to a topic per day in his second edition. So each day you will get a collection of quotes dedicated just to a single topic, while the first and the third editions had different quotes on different subjects per day, which doesn't help to focus and doesn't help you to think about those ideas throughout the day, because you cannot focus on different ideas within the 24 hours. What Tolstoy started to do in the second edition of his book is that he started with a quote by Seneca, or a quote from Talmud or from the New Testament, and then at the bottom you can read quotes or ideas by himself. You know, he writes his own reflections. So when you begin an entry for, let's say, June 24th, you will see a small entry, a quote by Tolstoy himself, his own thoughts and reflections upon the quotes that will follow. And then later on, with the third edition, Tolstoy also decided to write short stories on the basis of quotes that he compiled for the week. He called those stories the Sunday reading stories, but unfortunately this edition, this book, doesn't contain those stories, and I was trying to find that book to read it to see what those stories are like, but it seems that they haven't been yet translated into English, and getting books from Russia right now is incredibly difficult. I went to a Russian school in Moscow, and I spent 10 years in that school, and not a single time our literature teacher told us about Tolstoy's Calendar of Wisdom. I think one of the main reasons why Tolstoy's Calendar of Wisdom is not popular even in Russia, and it remains relatively unknown, is because of the Soviet legacy. The Soviet Union and Soviet censorship saw that Tolstoy included a lot of religious quotes and ideas in his Calendar of Wisdom. And since religion was banned in the Soviet Union, they decided to silence this side of Tolstoy. The first edition after the Soviet Union was published in 1995. So only about 90 years later, almost a century later, after Tolstoy's Calendar of Wisdom was initially published, it was published again in his motherland. So it took about a century for Tolstoy's motherland to acknowledge the genius of this calendar. As he wrote in his diary, he wanted this book to be on the nightstands of every person in the world, because he wanted more and more people to get a spiritual nourishment from those quotes. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll include a link to this edition of Tolstoy's Calendar of Wisdom down below in the description of this video. If you like this video, please consider giving it a like and thumbs up. If you enjoyed this channel, if this is not the first video that you're watching here, consider subscribing to my channel. It really inspires me, motivates me, and kind of keeps me going, because I see that the things that I share matter. I'm rambling now. I will see you in the next one, everybody. Ciao.